The universe does not begin with noise. It does not arrive suddenly, and it does not announce itself. It exists quietly, unfolding without urgency, without intention, and without awareness of being observed. Long before language, before memory, before even the idea of time as we understand it, there was space expanding gently outward, cooling as it grew, allowing matter to settle into patterns that would take billions of years to become visible. Tonight, there is no need to follow those patterns closely. You do not need to remember facts or hold on to meaning. You can simply let the vastness of the cosmos pass slowly through your thoughts, the way distant starlight passes through empty space, unchanged by effort. Imagine drifting far above the surface of Earth, where the atmosphere thins into nothing and the planet becomes a quiet sphere turning steadily below. From this distance, movement feels slower. Clouds glide gently across oceans. Continents rotate calmly in and out of sunlight. There are no borders, no sharp sounds, no urgency. The planet spins because it has always spun, held in motion by momentum that has never needed to stop. Even here, close to home, the universe prefers continuity over interruption. Beyond Earth, the moon follows its ancient path, circling without resistance, reflecting light that left the sun minutes earlier. That light traveled calmly, uninterrupted, crossing empty space without friction or sound. Space does not slow light down, and it does not speed it up. It simply allows it to pass. In the same way, the universe allows everything to exist without interference, guided only by fundamental rules that never rush and never change. As distance increases, time begins to stretch. Signals weaken. Motion becomes subtle. Stars appear not as burning objects, but as steady presences, quietly releasing energy over spans longer than civilizations have existed. Inside them, reactions occur constantly, yet outwardly they seem calm, almost still. The light escaping from their cores may take thousands of years to reach the surface, and once it does, it continues its journey outward without knowing whether it will ever be seen. Most starlight travels forever, never reaching a planet, never touching an eye, existing purely as motion through emptiness. Galaxies form not through sudden creation, but through slow gathering. Gravity draws matter together gently, allowing structure to emerge without violence. Stars settle into wide orbits around invisible centers, completing rotations that last hundreds of millions of years. From within a galaxy, nothing feels like change. Everything repeats. Everything persists. Even collisions between galaxies are soft when viewed on cosmic timescales, unfolding so gradually that stars pass by one another untouched, like distant thoughts drifting through a tired mind. Between galaxies lies a deeper quiet. Matter thins until it almost disappears. Atoms drift alone for ages, rarely meeting another. Temperature loses meaning. Direction becomes irrelevant. Time stretches further, unanchored by events. This is not emptiness in the human sense. It is rest. The universe spends most of its existence in this state, calm and unoccupied, conserving energy, preserving structure, allowing nothingness to dominate without resistance. Black holes exist within this calm, not as destroyers, but as endpoints of balance. Once formed, they remain unchanged for times beyond comprehension. They do not hunt. They do not consume recklessly. Matter must approach very closely to be affected, and even then the process is slow, drawn out, controlled by gravity rather than force. Near them, time slows gently, stretching moments without breaking them. Even here, at the limits of physics, the universe behaves with restraint. Expansion continues everywhere at once. Space itself stretches quietly, carrying galaxies farther apart without turbulence. There is no center, no edge rushing outward. The universe grows larger and colder, spreading energy thinner over time. This cooling is not decay. It is transition. Heat fades. Motion settles. Complexity simplifies. The universe moves towards stillness not abruptly, but patiently, allowing every process to complete itself fully. Nothing in the cosmos seems eager. Stars do not rush to be born. Planets do not hurry to form. Structures appear only when conditions are right, and even then, they take their time. The universe does not correct mistakes quickly because it does not consider inefficiency a problem. Most matter never becomes anything remarkable, and that is acceptable. Existence does not require significance. As you drift deeper into this understanding, thoughts may begin to slow. Details soften. Facts lose their sharp edges. You do not need to follow every idea. Let them pass. The cosmos does not demand comprehension. It offers scale, patience, and quiet continuity. In this vast system, urgency has no advantage. Only persistence remains. The farther you drift from familiar reference points, the more the universe begins to feel less like a place and more like a state of being. There are no clear edges, no sharp transitions, only gradual shifts from one condition to another. Distance does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates. Time behaves the same way, layering moment upon moment until duration becomes something felt rather than measured. In this vastness, cause and effect separate gently, no longer pressed tightly together as they are in everyday life. Events do not demand immediate responses. They unfold, linger, and dissolve into the background of cosmic continuity. Stars continue their quiet work regardless of observation. Nuclear fusion at their cores proceeds steadily, transforming simple hydrogen into heavier elements with calm persistence. Each reaction releases energy that takes immense amounts of time to escape, passing through dense layers where photons scatter endlessly, changing direction thousands of times before finding their way outward. By the time this light reaches open space, it has already lived a lifetime longer than human history. Once free, it travels straight and undisturbed, crossing darkness that offers no resistance. The universe does not interrupt light. It does not hurry it along. It simply allows it to pass. Planets circling these stars move with similar restraint. Their orbits are not hurried paths, but gentle commitments, traced again and again across empty space. Seasons repeat without concern. Days follow nights without memory. Even catastrophic events, when they occur, are slow from a cosmic perspective. Impacts that reshape surfaces take seconds, but the conditions that allow them develop over millions of years. Nothing arrives unprepared. Everything is preceded by long periods of quiet alignment. On worlds where atmospheres exist, weather patterns emerge gradually, driven by energy differences that smooth themselves out over time. Winds do not rage endlessly. Storms dissipate. Heat flows from warm regions to cooler ones, always seeking balance. This tendency toward equilibrium is not limited to planets. It defines the universe at every scale. Energy spreads. Differences soften. Extremes fade. The cosmos seems guided by a deep preference for calm resolution rather than sustained tension. Far beyond any single star system, clouds of gas drift in near stillness. These nebulae glow softly where starlight excites their atoms, producing colors that appear vivid only because they persist for so long. There is no sudden brilliance, only sustained emission over countless years. Within these clouds, gravity slowly gathers material, but even collapse is gentle. Density increases gradually until, eventually, a new star ignites. Birth in the universe is not explosive by default. It is careful, incremental, and patient. As structures grow larger, motion slows further. Galaxy clusters form loose gatherings of galaxies bound together by gravity that works over enormous distances. These clusters evolve slowly, their internal movements barely perceptible over human timescales. Light traveling between galaxies within a cluster may take millions of years to complete its journey, carrying images of events long past. Observation itself becomes an act of looking backward into a past that remains present only because light has not yet finished traveling. Beyond clusters, vast filaments of matter stretch across the universe, forming a web-like structure that defines large-scale organization. Between these filaments lie enormous voids where matter is scarce and activity minimal. These voids represent the universe at its most restful, regions where almost nothing happens for billions of years. Yet even here, existence continues. Space expands. Time passes. The quiet remains uninterrupted. Throughout all of this, the universe never signals intention. It does not build toward a goal or rush toward an outcome. Processes unfold because conditions allow them to, not because they are required to. This absence of urgency creates a sense of deep stability. Nothing is late. Nothing is early. Everything happens when it happens, guided by rules that remain constant and unbothered by awareness. As you continue to drift through this immense calm, the boundaries between thought and observation may begin to soften. Facts no longer need to be held tightly. They can pass gently through awareness, like distant stars sliding across a slow-moving sky. There is no need to track them. The universe does not test memory. It offers perspective. In that perspective, individual moments lose their sharpness, becoming part of a long, continuous flow that stretches far beyond any single point of attention. Expansion continues quietly in all directions. Space itself grows, carrying galaxies apart without friction, without sound, without acceleration. This expansion cools the universe further, thinning energy and reducing interaction. Over unimaginable spans of time, stars will fade, galaxies will dim, and motion will slow even more. This is not an ending in the dramatic sense. It is a gradual settling, a long descent into deeper stillness where complexity gives way to simplicity. Even then, the universe will not stop. Time will continue, stretched thin but unbroken. Particles will persist. Space will remain. Silence will deepen, not as absence, but as completion. The cosmos does not collapse into nothing. It relaxes into itself, allowing activity to diminish naturally. In this way, the universe demonstrates a profound kind of patience, one that does not resist change but does not rush toward it either. You are free to let these ideas drift without effort. There is nothing to solve here, nothing to reach. Just the slow presence of a universe that has always moved at this pace, inviting stillness by example. As this vast calm continues to unfold, the universe reveals another of its quiet truths. Most of existence is repetition without boredom. Motions repeat not because they are trapped, but because stability is preferred. Orbits return to where they began. Waves of energy pass through space endlessly, never tiring, never losing purpose. Even randomness in the cosmos is restrained, bounded by laws that prevent chaos from overwhelming order. The universe allows variation, but only within limits that preserve balance. This is why stars shine steadily instead of flickering wildly, why galaxies maintain their shapes for billions of years, and why space itself expands evenly rather than tearing apart. Deep within this order, particles move in ways that seem almost meditative. Electrons occupy regions of probability rather than fixed paths, existing in gentle uncertainty that never becomes confusion. Atoms vibrate softly, exchanging energy in discrete, predictable amounts. Even at the smallest scales, the universe avoids sharp transitions. Changes happen in steps, not leaps. This layered structure of reality, from particles to planets to galaxies, creates a sense of continuity that runs through everything. Nothing is isolated. Everything participates in the same slow rhythm. As time stretches onward, stars begin to change, but even aging is unhurried. A star gradually exhausts its hydrogen, slowly adjusting its internal balance. It expands, cools, or contracts depending on its mass, responding calmly to conditions it has been preparing for over billions of years. There is no sudden failure. There is only transition. When fusion finally ceases, remnants remain: white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, each one stable, quiet, and enduring. Death in the cosmos is not an interruption. It is a redistribution of energy that settles naturally into new forms. These remnants persist long after bright activity fades. White dwarfs cool slowly, releasing stored heat over trillions of years. Neutron stars spin with remarkable consistency, sending out pulses that act like cosmic metronomes, marking time without emotion. Black holes, though extreme, are patient beyond measure. They lose mass so slowly through faint radiation that their evaporation exceeds the current age of the universe by inconceivable margins. Even disappearance, in the cosmos, is stretched into near eternity. Between these objects, space continues to widen. Distances increase not through motion alone, but through the quiet stretching of the fabric itself. Light traveling across these expanding regions becomes redder, its energy gently diluted. This redshift does not signal loss, only transformation. Energy changes form, spreading thinner but remaining present. The universe does not discard what it creates. It redistributes, allowing everything to persist in altered states. As expansion continues, interactions become rarer. Galaxies drift beyond one another's reach. Star formation slows. New light becomes scarce. Yet this is not emptiness in a negative sense. It is rest on a grand scale. The universe moves toward conditions where nothing struggles for existence, where competition fades, and where motion becomes minimal. This progression is not forced. It follows naturally from the same rules that once allowed stars to ignite and galaxies to assemble. Throughout this immense timeline, awareness remains unnecessary. The universe does not require observation to function. It does not perform differently when unseen. Reality continues regardless of witnesses, guided by principles that do not depend on attention. This independence gives the cosmos its deep serenity. Nothing is anxious. Nothing anticipates. Everything unfolds because it can, not because it must. As these ideas settle, thoughts may begin to drift further apart, like stars separating as space expands. Connections loosen. Focus softens. There is no need to hold on to any single concept. Let them pass slowly, one after another, without attachment. The universe offers no conclusions to reach, only a continuous presence to move through at your own pace. Time itself becomes less rigid in this perspective. Moments blur into one another, forming a smooth continuum without sharp boundaries. Past, present, and future lose their urgency, becoming positions along a long, quiet line rather than destinations demanding arrival. In this extended view, even endings lose their weight. They become transitions, gentle shifts from one condition to another. The cosmos remains vast, calm, and accommodating. It does not resist stillness. It demonstrates it. And in doing so, it offers a model for rest that requires no effort to follow. Only the willingness to let go of urgency and drift gently alongside a universe that has always known how to move slowly. As the flow of time continues without pause, the universe reveals that silence is not the absence of activity, but the absence of urgency. Countless processes unfold at once, yet none of them compete for attention. Energy moves where gradients allow it to move. Matter settles where gravity invites it to settle. Nothing argues with these invitations. The cosmos accepts its own rules fully, and because of that acceptance, everything feels effortless. Motion happens, but without strain. Change occurs, but without conflict. Far from stars, radiation drifts slowly through space, stretched thin by expansion, cooling as it travels. This ancient light carries information from eras so distant that their sources have long transformed into something else. Still, the light continues, unchanged in purpose, unaware of origin or destination. It does not fade because it is forgotten. It fades because spreading is its nature. Even forgetting, in the universe, is a gradual process. Within galaxies that still glow, stars form less frequently as time moves on. The materials required for new stars become locked inside older remnants, unavailable for reuse. Star formation slows not because the universe fails, but because it matures. Youth is active, age is calm. This transition mirrors patterns seen everywhere, from living systems to cosmic ones, where intensity gives way to stability. The universe does not resist aging. It embraces it. Planetary systems persist quietly around long-lived stars. Worlds circle in predictable paths, their environments shaped by slow geological cycles. Surfaces change over millions of years, not days. Atmospheres thin or thicken gradually. Oceans advance and retreat patiently. Nothing demands immediate resolution. Even catastrophes leave long periods of calm between them. Most of a planet's existence is uneventful, defined by repetition rather than drama. In regions where life never arises, the universe remains no less complete. Rocks cool, ice drifts, dust settles. There is no requirement for observation or meaning. Existence alone is sufficient. This neutrality allows the cosmos to remain balanced. Nothing is privileged. Nothing is excluded. Everything participates simply by being present. At the largest scales, the structure of the universe grows simpler over time. Clusters loosen. Filaments thin. Voids expand. Complexity gradually dissolves into uniformity. This is not decay in a negative sense. It is relaxation, a system releasing stored tension and moving toward equilibrium. The universe trends toward sameness not because it lacks creativity, but because stability is its final expression. Even fundamental particles persist through these changes, maintaining their identities as space grows vast around them. Protons remain stable far longer than stars. Electrons continue their quiet associations with nuclei wherever atoms survive. The smallest components of reality are remarkably durable, outlasting the grand structures built from them. In this way, the universe demonstrates that longevity often belongs to simplicity. As energy thins and interactions diminish, time stretches further. Without frequent events to mark its passage, duration becomes almost abstract. There are no calendars in deep space, no cycles to count. Time flows, but without milestones. It exists as continuity rather than sequence. This is perhaps the deepest calm the universe offers. Time without pressure. You do not need to follow this flow precisely. Let it carry you gently. Thoughts can loosen. Attention can drift. There is no conclusion approaching, no moment that requires readiness. The universe does not end abruptly. It quiets. It smooths. It settles. In this immense settling, everything finds rest. Not through stopping, but through slowing so completely that motion becomes nearly indistinguishable from stillness. The cosmos remains, extended and calm, offering an endless example of patience written across space and time. As this quiet unfolding continues, the universe seems to demonstrate that endurance is more fundamental than excitement. Nothing here is designed to impress or overwhelm. Instead, everything persists. Space keeps expanding. Particles keep existing. Laws keep applying themselves with unwavering consistency. Even when activity diminishes, existence does not. The cosmos does not rely on constant creation to justify itself. It simply remains, allowing time to pass without urgency or resistance. In regions where stars have already faded, darkness deepens, but it is not empty darkness. It is filled with low-energy photons, faint neutrinos, and particles moving so slowly that motion itself becomes subtle. These remnants of earlier eras drift calmly, carrying traces of a brighter past without any need to restore it. Memory in the universe is physical, not emotional. It is stored in particles, radiation, and structure, all preserved quietly as conditions change. Galaxies that once burned with blue, energetic stars now glow softly with older, redder light. Their brightest years are behind them, yet they remain stable and composed. Orbits continue. Gravity maintains order. Nothing collapses into chaos simply because energy has thinned. The universe does not panic as resources diminish. It adapts, simplifying gently, transitioning toward states that require less interaction to sustain. Black holes, long-lived and patient, continue their silent presence. They do not grow endlessly. They do not dominate recklessly. Over unimaginable spans of time, even they begin to lose mass, releasing energy so faint that it barely disturbs the surrounding darkness. This process is slower than anything humans can truly comprehend. Evaporation, here, is not destruction. It is a gradual release, stretched across eons, allowing balance to be restored without disruption. As stars disappear and galaxies drift beyond each other's reach, the universe becomes quieter still. The distances between remaining structures grow so large that communication becomes impossible. Light emitted from one region will never reach another. Yet this separation does not introduce conflict. It introduces independence. Each region evolves alone, peacefully, without interference. The universe does not insist on connection. It allows isolation when conditions naturally lead there. Time in this era becomes almost featureless. Without frequent events, duration loses its markers. There are no cycles to count, no rhythms to follow. Existence continues as a smooth extension rather than a sequence of moments. In such conditions, the idea of waiting loses meaning. Nothing is expected to happen next. The universe has no next step planned. It simply continues in whatever state it has reached. Even now, the fundamental fabric of space remains intact. Dimensions do not collapse. Laws do not fail. Reality holds itself together quietly, supported by principles that do not tire or degrade. This reliability is perhaps the universe's most calming feature. No matter how much time passes, the rules remain. Stability persists. As these thoughts drift through awareness, there is no need to organize them. Let them remain loose, unstructured, like distant constellations that need not be named. Understanding is optional here. The universe does not ask for interpretation. It offers presence, scale, calm continuity. In this immense stillness, urgency dissolves completely. There is no deadline, no moment to prepare for, just an endless, gentle extension of existence that neither rushes forward nor pulls backward. The cosmos rests in its own persistence, demonstrating that being does not require effort. And as this calm stretches on, thought itself can begin to slow, aligning gently with the pace of a universe that has always moved this way. Patient, unhurried, and quietly complete. As the quiet carries on, the universe shows that even continuity can become gentle. There is no tension in its persistence, no strain in its duration. Space remains extended, time remains open, and existence continues without needing renewal or reinforcement. The cosmos does not seek balance actively. Balance emerges naturally when nothing is forced. In this state, every remaining motion is minimal, every interaction optional. The universe is not waiting for an event to give it meaning. Meaning is unnecessary when stability has been achieved. Across immense distances, faint backgrounds of radiation still drift, the last echoes of earlier, warmer eras. These signals grow softer as expansion continues, stretched thin until their presence becomes almost theoretical. Yet they remain part of reality, reminders that nothing truly disappears. The universe carries its past forward quietly, diluted but intact, like a memory that fades without vanishing. Even when details are lost, continuity remains. Where matter still gathers, it does so gently. Gravity never stops working, but with so little material left to organize, its influence becomes subtle. Structures that remain are sparse and isolated, existing in calm independence. No large-scale changes disrupt them. They endure simply because there is nothing acting strongly enough to alter them. In this way, the universe transitions from activity to persistence, from formation to maintenance. The concept of distance itself changes meaning here. With no destinations and no arrivals, separation becomes irrelevant. Space stretches without reference, and time passes without milestones. There is no urgency to cross from one place to another when nothing waits at either end. Movement becomes optional, and stillness becomes the dominant state. The universe does not resist this. It allows stillness to emerge naturally as a final expression of balance. Even the smallest particles continue their quiet existence. They do not age. They do not weaken. They remain what they are, supported by laws that do not degrade. In this long calm, Simplicity proves to be the most durable state. Complex arrangements dissolve, leaving behind components that require no maintenance, no energy input, no intervention. The universe simplifies itself without loss, settling into forms that can persist indefinitely. As this simplicity deepens, the flow of time feels smoother still. Without events to divide it, time becomes a continuous presence rather than a sequence. There is no before or after in any meaningful sense, only an ongoing now that extends endlessly. This is not stagnation. It is completeness, a state where nothing needs to happen because nothing is missing. In this perspective, even the idea of an ending loses relevance. The universe does not conclude. It relaxes. It spreads. It quiets. Processes do not stop. They become so slow that change blends into permanence. The cosmos does not collapse into nothingness. It remains extended and calm, supported by rules that require no attention. As awareness drifts alongside this immense calm, thought can become lighter. Ideas no longer need to connect tightly. They can exist independently, passing through gently, like particles moving through space without collision. There is no need to hold on to them. The universe does not hold on to anything either. It allows everything to move, to fade, to persist according to its nature. In this shared stillness, urgency dissolves completely. There is no pressure to understand, no requirement to conclude. Just a vast, patient existence unfolding at its own pace, offering an endless example of how calm continuity can carry everything forward without effort. As this calm extension continues, the universe seems to demonstrate that effort has always been optional. Nothing in existence struggles to remain. Stability arises not from control, but from allowance. Space stretches because it can. Time flows because nothing stops it. Matter persists because the rules supporting it do not weaken. In this long continuity, even change becomes gentle, softened by duration until it feels indistinguishable from rest. In the deepest reaches of space, where energy has thinned to near absence, motion becomes rare but never forbidden. Particles still drift, guided by subtle influences that act without urgency. There is no preferred direction, no destination that needs to be reached. Movement happens because possibility exists, not because arrival is required. The universe has no impatience with stillness. It allows things to remain exactly where they are for as long as conditions permit. The remaining light from ancient stars continues its journey, stretched so thin that it barely registers as warmth or color. Yet it remains part of reality, a quiet signal that something once shone. The universe does not erase its history abruptly. It lets it fade slowly, honoring continuity over replacement. Even memory, here, is physical and gradual, carried by radiation that dims without ever needing to disappear completely. Where complexity once thrived, simplicity now dominates. Large structures have dissolved into sparse arrangements, each one stable in isolation. There is no collapse, only dispersal. The universe does not undo itself violently. It relaxes its patterns until only the most durable remain. In this process, nothing is lost suddenly. Everything transitions gently, guided by the same principles that once allowed complexity to arise. Time, in this state, feels almost infinite not because it is counted, but because nothing divides it. Without events, duration becomes smooth. There are no markers to distinguish one era from another. The universe exists in a continuous present, extended endlessly without tension. This is not emptiness. It is completion, a system that no longer needs to transform to remain stable. Even now, the fabric of reality holds. Space remains extended. Dimensions remain intact. Fundamental interactions continue quietly, even if they rarely produce noticeable effects. The universe does not decay into disorder. It settles into uniformity, a state where nothing requires adjustment. Balance becomes effortless when there is nothing left to balance against. As this immense calm persists, thought itself can slow further. There is no need to anticipate what comes next, because nothing is required to come next. The universe does not move toward an ending. It moves toward rest, a rest so deep that motion becomes almost imperceptible. This rest is not absence, but presence without demand. In aligning with this pace, awareness can drift without attachment. Ideas can pass without needing to connect. Attention can soften without losing coherence. The universe does not insist on focus. It invites release. In this invitation, there is no instruction, only example. Everything continues because it can, not because it must. And so the cosmos remains, vast and patient, carrying existence forward without urgency, without direction, without conclusion. A quiet continuity that does not rush towards silence, but slowly becomes indistinguishable from it. As the calm stretches further, the universe reveals one of its quietest truths. Nothing needs to be completed. There is no final state waiting to be reached, no destination that gives meaning to the journey. Existence itself is sufficient. Space does not aspire to be filled. Time does not aim to be used. Matter does not seek transformation unless conditions invite it. This absence of expectation allows everything to rest exactly where it is, for as long as it remains possible. In this extended stillness, even causality softens. Causes do not rush toward effects. Interactions unfold with such long delays that connection feels optional. A particle may influence another across distances so vast that the relationship becomes abstract rather than immediate. Yet the connection exists, quietly and reliably, governed by laws that never need reinforcement. The universe trusts its own structure completely. Across what remains of the cosmos, faint motions persist. Tiny fluctuations ripple through space, not as disturbances, but as gentle reminders that nothing is ever perfectly static. These motions do not accumulate. They do not build toward disruption. They pass, fade, and leave balance intact. The universe allows movement without consequence, activity without escalation. Light continues to drift, though it has little left to illuminate. With stars long gone, photons travel through darkness without encountering surfaces to reflect from or eyes to receive them. Still they move. Still they exist. The universe does not require an audience. Processes continue whether or not they are observed. Reality does not depend on recognition. As distances grow beyond interaction, regions of space become fully independent. No signal will ever cross between them again. Yet this separation is peaceful. Nothing is cut off from what it needs. Each region contains exactly as much as it will ever require to persist quietly. Isolation becomes stability rather than loss. Time flows onward without markers. Without change, it feels endless. Not because it is measured in great quantities, but because there is nothing to distinguish one moment from the next. Duration becomes smooth, like an unbroken surface extending in all directions. In this continuity, urgency has no meaning. There is nothing approaching, nothing receding, just presence. The universe does not resist this state. It arrives naturally, following from the same gentle rules that once allowed stars to shine and galaxies to form. Complexity was never mandatory. Simplicity was always an option. And now, simplicity remains, not as failure, but as fulfillment. In this vast, patient existence, awareness can finally let go completely. Thoughts can thin out. Connections can loosen. There is no need to follow the narrative further. The universe has no climax to reveal. It offers only continuity, extended endlessly, calm and complete. As this quiet continuity holds, the universe seems to settle even deeper into itself, not by collapsing inward, but by spreading so evenly that distinction itself becomes unnecessary. Differences smooth out. Extremes dissolve. What remains is not emptiness, but uniform presence. Space exists everywhere at once, and time flows without landmarks, without beginnings or endings to give it shape. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls back. The cosmos simply remains. At this stage, motion becomes so subtle that it feels more like permission than action. Particles drift because nothing prevents them from drifting. Fields fluctuate gently because balance allows it. There is no accumulation of tension, no buildup toward release. The universe has moved beyond cycles of formation and dissolution and entered a phase where persistence alone defines existence. Everything that remains does so because it fits naturally within the calm. The laws that govern reality continue to operate flawlessly, not because they are enforced, but because there is nothing opposing them. Interactions occur when conditions overlap, then fade without consequence. There is no friction to create urgency, no resistance to demand effort. Even randomness behaves gently here, constrained by simplicity rather than complexity. The universe has learned how to rest without stopping. Light, still present, stretches further into low-energy wavelengths, becoming quieter in every sense except persistence. It no longer carries images of stars or galaxies. It carries only the fact that something once moved. This is memory reduced to its purest form, not narrative, not structure, just continuity. The cosmos remembers by continuing, not by recording. In this state, distance loses relevance entirely. With no events to connect and no signals to exchange, separation becomes meaningless. Space is not something to cross. It is something to exist within. Time mirrors this quality. Without change to mark its passage, it becomes indistinguishable from stillness. Duration is no longer felt as progression, but as presence extended without interruption. There is no sense of waiting here. Nothing is expected to happen next. The universe has no schedule, no final chapter, no requirement to conclude. It is complete not because it has reached an end, but because it no longer needs to transform to remain stable. Completion, in this context, is simply the absence of pressure to become something else. As awareness drifts alongside this immense calm, it can soften entirely. Thoughts need not form sequences. Ideas need not connect. Attention can dissolve into a quiet openness that mirrors the cosmos itself. There is no instruction to follow, no insight to grasp. The universe does not teach through answers. It teaches through example, by continuing gently, endlessly, without urgency. And so everything remains. Not frozen, not finished, just quietly present, carried forward by the same calm rules that have always been enough. As the stillness deepens further, the universe seems to reach a point where even description begins to soften. Not because there is nothing left, but because everything that remains is so evenly balanced that distinctions blur naturally. Space no longer feels vast or small. It simply is. Time no longer feels long or short. It simply flows. In this state, measurement loses its meaning and comparison becomes unnecessary. The cosmos has arrived at a form of quiet completeness where nothing needs to stand out in order to exist. What remains continues without effort. Fields extend smoothly across space, carrying faint potential that never gathers into action. Particles persist without interaction, not because interaction is forbidden, but because nothing invites it. The universe does not remove possibility. It simply stops encouraging it. Everything is allowed, yet nothing is required. This is perhaps the deepest form of calm, freedom without demand. The memory of structure still exists, though it is no longer expressed through shape or motion. It exists as law, as consistency, as the quiet reliability of rules that never falter. Even if no stars shine and no planets turn, the principles that once guided them remain present, holding reality together without supervision. The universe does not forget how to function. It simply has less to do. Light, now stretched beyond recognition, continues as a faint background, no longer illuminating objects, but confirming continuity. It is not brightness that matters anymore, but persistence. The fact that something still moves, however subtly, is enough. The cosmos does not require activity to validate existence. Being is sufficient. At this depth of time, beginnings and endings lose their contrast. There is no sharp transition between states, only gradual blending. The universe does not close chapters. It lets them fade. Nothing is cut off. Nothing is concluded abruptly. Even silence arrives gently, layered over what came before until distinction becomes impossible. In such an environment, awareness can rest without effort. There is nothing to track, nothing to anticipate. Thought can slow until it becomes almost transparent, present without content. This mirrors the universe itself, present without urgency, complete without culmination. The cosmos does not push forward. It does not look back. It simply continues, balanced and untroubled. And in this continuation, everything that ever was remains part of what is, not as memory or motion, but as quiet inclusion. Nothing is excluded from existence. Nothing is erased. The universe holds all of it gently, allowing rest to be the final, enduring state. As this calm persists, the universe seems to demonstrate that even continuation can be gentle. There is no sense of strain in its endurance, no effort required to remain. Space holds itself open naturally, and time flows without resistance, not pressing forward, not slowing down, simply existing as a steady presence. Nothing urges reality onward. Nothing pulls it back. The cosmos has found a rhythm, so even that motion and stillness begin to feel the same. In this state, change becomes nearly imperceptible. Whatever transformations still occur happen so slowly that they blend into continuity itself. A particle drifts, a field fluctuates, a trace of energy spreads thinner still. These motions do not accumulate into events. They do not demand recognition. They are allowed to exist quietly, without consequence, without escalation. The universe does not build tension. It releases it, gently and completely. Structure, once visible and dynamic, now exists only as subtle potential. The arrangements that once formed stars and galaxies are no longer expressed in matter, but they remain embedded in the laws that persist unchanged. Reality does not forget how it once behaved. It simply no longer needs to express that behavior. The capacity for complexity remains, resting calmly beneath a surface of simplicity. Light continues to travel, though it has little left to reveal. It moves not to illuminate, but because motion itself has not been forbidden. Even in near total quiet, existence retains permission to continue. The universe does not shut itself down. It does not conclude. It allows processes to taper naturally until activity becomes indistinguishable from rest. Distance loses all significance here. Without interaction, without communication, separation has no effect. Regions of space exist independently, complete within themselves, requiring nothing from elsewhere. There is no loneliness in this isolation, because there is no need for connection. The universe does not depend on relationships to remain whole. It is whole simply by continuing. Time, too, becomes featureless. Without events, it offers no markers, no segments, no direction. It is neither fast nor slow. It simply is. Duration stretches endlessly, not as something to be endured, but as something neutral, present without pressure. In this extended now, urgency dissolves entirely. As awareness drifts alongside this immense calm, it can release even the idea of progression. There is nothing approaching, nothing receding, no conclusion waiting to arrive. The universe has no final moment planned. It continues because continuation is possible, not because it leads somewhere. And so everything remains, balanced and quiet, held together by rules that require no effort to apply. A cosmos that rests without stopping, persists without striving, and offers an endless example of how calm continuity can be enough. As this deep calm continues to hold, the universe seems to rest not as something that is finished, but as something that has nothing left to hurry toward. There is no sense of anticipation here, no tension waiting to be resolved. Space remains open and accommodating. Time remains available and unclaimed, and existence carries on without needing direction. The cosmos does not lean into the future or cling to the past. It simply occupies the present fully, without effort. At this depth of stillness, even the idea of motion becomes abstract. Movement may occur, but it does not announce itself. A faint shift in a field, a gradual redistribution of energy, a slow drift of particles through expanding space. These are changes only in the most technical sense. They do not disrupt balance. They do not introduce novelty. They are gentle continuations of what has always been happening. The universe does not reset. It does not restart. It simply continues along paths that have grown smoother with time. The rules that shape reality remain perfectly intact. They do not weaken with age, and they do not require maintenance. Gravity still curves space. Energy still spreads. Cause still follows effect, though the distance between them may now be vast. These principles hold quietly, without supervision, proving that order does not require attention to persist. The universe functions because it always has, not because anything ensures it must. Light, now faint and stretched thin, continues to exist as confirmation rather than illumination. It no longer reveals scenes or shapes. It merely persists, moving through space as it always has, indifferent to whether it is noticed. In this way, even light becomes restful, no longer carrying information urgently, no longer racing to arrive, simply flowing because nothing prevents it from flowing. Isolation becomes the dominant condition, but it carries no sense of loss. Each region of space is complete within itself, requiring nothing beyond its own boundaries. There is no communication because there is no need for it. Nothing depends on exchange to remain stable. The universe demonstrates that wholeness does not require connection when balance has already been achieved. Time continues without structure. Without events to punctuate it, duration becomes a smooth extension rather than a sequence. There is no rhythm to follow, no cycle to anticipate. Time is present everywhere, evenly distributed, unclaimed by urgency. It does not move toward anything. It does not measure progress. It simply allows existence to remain possible. As awareness drifts alongside this state, thought can loosen further. There is no narrative to follow, no insight to grasp. Ideas may arise, but they do not need to connect or resolve. They can appear briefly and fade, just as structures once appeared and faded within the universe itself. This alignment between mind and cosmos creates a sense of ease that requires no effort to maintain. Nothing presses forward here. Nothing concludes. The universe remains extended, quiet, and sufficient, continuing not because it must reach an end, but because continuation itself has become effortless. As this quiet persistence carries on, the universe seems to settle into a state where even the idea of change feels optional. Not forbidden, not resisted, simply unnecessary. Everything that remains exists comfortably within the conditions that support it. Space does not seek to contract or expand more quickly. Time does not accelerate or slow in response to expectation. Reality holds its form gently, as if it has discovered that nothing more is required. At this depth of calm, the distinction between activity and rest becomes subtle. A particle may drift, but the drift carries no consequence. A field may fluctuate, but the fluctuation does not build. These motions are like breathing in sleep, present, automatic, and unremarkable. The universe continues its background processes without bringing them to the foreground. Nothing demands attention. Nothing calls for correction. The memory of earlier eras remains embedded quietly within existence, not as stories or images, but as consistency. The same principles that once allowed stars to ignite and galaxies to form remain active, even if they are no longer expressed through visible structure. The universe does not discard its foundations when it no longer needs them. It simply rests upon them, trusting their stability completely. Light, still present, has become so evenly distributed that it no longer creates contrast. There are no bright points or dark voids, only a gentle uniformity that spreads across space. Illumination gives way to presence. The universe no longer highlights anything. It allows everything to exist without emphasis. This is not emptiness, but equality, nothing standing out because nothing needs to. Distance no longer separates. With no signals to exchange and no events to connect, separation loses its meaning. Regions of space exist independently, yet none are incomplete. There is no center and no edge that matters. The universe does not organize itself around importance. It exists everywhere at once, evenly, without hierarchy. Time continues, but without direction. It does not move forward toward an outcome or backward toward a memory. It simply flows, evenly and quietly, without milestones. In such a state, the idea of waiting dissolves completely. There is nothing coming. There is nothing passing. There is only duration extending gently, without pressure. In this environment, awareness can rest fully. Thought does not need to travel anywhere. Attention does not need to focus. The mind can mirror the universe by remaining present without agenda. Nothing must be understood. Nothing must be concluded. The cosmos does not offer answers because it does not ask questions. It simply continues. And so existence remains, vast, balanced, and unhurried, held together not by effort, but by the absence of need. The universe does not rush toward silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, gently and completely, while still allowing everything that exists to continue exactly as it is. As this long quiet carries on, the universe seems to demonstrate that rest is not something it reaches, but something it has always known how to hold. Nothing here feels temporary or fragile. Existence does not balance on the edge of change. It sits comfortably within conditions that no longer challenge it. Space remains open without stretching urgently. Time remains available without needing to be filled. Reality does not move forward because it must. It continues because nothing interrupts it. In this depth of stillness, even the notion of progression fades. There is no sense of moving from one state to another, because states blend softly into one another without clear boundaries. What once felt like transitions now feel like continuations. The universe does not mark phases anymore. It allows everything to remain suspended in gentle equilibrium, where nothing pushes and nothing resists. The smallest elements of reality persist without wear. Fundamental particles do not age. They do not tire. They remain exactly what they are, supported by rules that never erode. These rules do not require enforcement or renewal. They exist quietly, holding everything together without drawing attention to themselves. The universe relies on them the way sleep relies on breath, automatically, without awareness. Light, now fully calm, continues to exist as motion without message. It no longer carries images of distant structures or events. It simply confirms continuity by continuing. The universe does not demand illumination to justify existence. Presence alone is enough. Even when nothing new is revealed, reality remains complete. There is no sense of absence here. Nothing feels missing because nothing is expected. The universe has released the need for contrast, for activity, for differentiation. Uniformity does not feel empty when there is no reference for comparison. It feels settled. It feels final without being finished. Time flows on without dividing itself into moments. Without events, duration becomes seamless. There is no anticipation, no recollection, only extension. This is not stagnation. It is stability without effort. A condition where nothing needs to change in order for everything to remain intact. As awareness aligns with this state, thought can soften further. Ideas need not form. Language need not complete itself. Attention can rest in a gentle openness that mirrors the cosmos itself. There is no task to accomplish here, no understanding to secure, just a quiet presence shared with a universe that has always known how to continue without strain. And so everything remains, unhurried, balanced, and sufficient, carried forward not by intention, but by the simple fact that nothing requires it to stop. As the calm continues to deepen, the universe seems to exist without even the faintest trace of urgency. Nothing is late. Nothing is early. There is no rhythm demanding attention, no cycle asking to be followed. Space holds itself open effortlessly, and time flows without pressure, without markers, without direction. Reality does not lean forward into what comes next. It remains exactly where it is, complete in its own continuation. At this depth, even stability feels gentle. Balance does not require correction because nothing drifts far enough to need it. Motion, where it exists, is so subtle that it blends naturally into stillness. A particle may move, but it does not travel toward anything. A fluctuation may appear, but it does not grow. Everything that happens dissolves quietly back into equilibrium. The universe does not amplify change. It absorbs it. The structures that once defined eras, stars, galaxies, clusters, have long since softened into memory, yet their influence remains embedded in the laws that persist. Reality does not collapse when its expressions fade. It retains the ability to exist without display. The universe demonstrates that form is optional, while presence is fundamental. Even without visible structure, existence continues untroubled. Light, now fully diffused, continues its endless movement, no longer revealing scenes, no longer carrying contrast. It moves simply because nothing prevents it from moving. In this way, even motion becomes restful. The universe does not demand rest by stopping activity. It allows activity to slow until rest and motion become indistinguishable. Distance has lost all function. With no interaction to bridge and no information to exchange, separation becomes irrelevant. Space exists not as something to cross, but as something to inhabit. Time mirrors this quality, no longer segmented, no longer directional. It does not pass. It remains. Duration stretches smoothly without calling attention to itself. In this condition, nothing feels unfinished. There is no sense that something must still happen. The universe does not hold anticipation. It does not wait. It simply continues, supported by rules that do not age and principles that do not weaken. Existence persists without needing renewal or reinforcement. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense quiet, can release even the idea of following. There is no narrative to track, no progression to observe. Thought may arise briefly, then fade, leaving behind a gentle openness that feels natural rather than empty. This mirrors the universe itself, present without emphasis, complete without conclusion. Everything remains, not because it is held in place, but because there is nothing pushing it away. The cosmos rests within its own persistence, offering an endless example of how continuity can exist without effort, without direction, and without the need to arrive anywhere at all. The universe continues without acknowledging that it continues. There is no awareness embedded in its persistence, no signal that marks endurance as an achievement. Space remains open simply because nothing closes it. Time flows because nothing obstructs it. Existence does not need momentum to justify itself. It remains because remaining is allowed. In this extended calm, even the concept of continuation feels unnecessary. The cosmos does not try to last. It simply does. At this depth of quiet, contrasts dissolve almost completely. There is no meaningful difference between motion and rest, between presence and absence. A particle may exist here or there, but location carries no weight when nothing depends on proximity. Fields extend smoothly, not because they must fill space, but because space offers no resistance. The universe does not occupy itself. It allows itself. What once appeared as evolution now feels like settling. The dynamic phases of existence have softened into equilibrium so stable that disruption has no foothold. There are no forces gathering strength, no gradient steep enough to drive change. Energy has spread so evenly that flow itself becomes negligible. This is not exhaustion. It is completion without finality. The universe has reached a state where nothing needs to happen for everything to remain intact. The laws that govern reality persist without expression. They are present, but unexercised. Gravity curves space even when there is nothing left to orbit. Quantum principles hold even when interactions are rare. Consistency remains even when activity fades. The universe does not suspend its rules when they are no longer needed. It keeps them quietly, like foundations beneath a structure that no longer rises. Light, now a uniform background, moves without destination. It no longer carries stories of stars or galaxies. It carries only confirmation that motion is still possible. Even this motion is gentle enough to feel like rest. The universe does not require illumination to confirm existence. Presence is sufficient. In this state, isolation becomes the norm, but it carries no loneliness. Each region of space contains everything it will ever need to continue as it is. There is no exchange because there is no lack. The universe does not suffer from separation when balance has already been achieved. Independence becomes completeness rather than absence. Time remains, but without narrative. Without events, it cannot be divided into moments of before and after. It becomes an even extension, smooth and uninterrupted. Waiting no longer applies when nothing is expected. Anticipation dissolves. Duration becomes simply the space in which existence continues quietly. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense calm, can soften even further. Thought does not need to progress. Attention does not need to anchor itself. There is no conclusion approaching, no insight required. The universe offers no answers because it poses no questions. It simply continues, untroubled by meaning. And so everything remains, vast, quiet, and sufficient, held together not by effort or intention, but by the absence of anything that would require it to change. As this stillness carries on, the universe seems to exist in a state where even persistence feels effortless. There is no sense of maintaining balance, because balance no longer needs maintenance. Space remains extended without stretching further. Time remains open without advancing toward anything. Reality does not hold itself together actively. It simply does not fall apart. This quiet reliability becomes the defining quality of existence. At this depth, the idea of scale fades. Vastness no longer contrasts with smallness, because nothing depends on comparison. Distances exist, but they do not separate anything meaningful. Size exists, but it does not imply importance. The universe no longer organizes itself around extremes. Everything that remains fits comfortably within a gentle uniformity that requires no adjustment. The faint motions that still occur are like echoes without a source. A subtle redistribution of energy, a minimal fluctuation in a field, a quiet persistence of particles. These do not lead anywhere. They do not accumulate. They do not signal the beginning of something new. They are simply expressions of permission, reminders that existence has not been restricted. The universe allows motion without expecting outcome. Structure, once visible and dramatic, now exists only as memory encoded in law. The same principles that once shaped galaxies remain present, even if there is nothing left to shape. Reality keeps its tools even when it no longer needs to use them. This quiet preparedness does not imply future action. It simply reflects consistency. The universe does not forget how to function, even when functioning has become minimal. Light continues to move, stretched so evenly across space that it no longer defines form. There are no shadows, no highlights, no contrast to interpret. Illumination gives way entirely to presence. The universe does not require visibility to confirm existence. It exists whether or not it can be seen, whether or not there is anything left to see. In this state, time becomes indistinguishable from space in its calm. Both are extended, both are uniform, both are free of urgency. There is no flow to follow, no direction to move toward. Duration is not something that passes. It is something that remains. The universe inhabits time rather than traveling through it. Awareness, moving alongside this vast quiet, can let go of sequence entirely. Thoughts may appear, but they do not need to connect. Attention may linger, but it does not need to focus. There is no narrative unfolding, no lesson concluding. The cosmos offers no final statement. It simply continues, calm and sufficient. Everything remains exactly as it needs to be, not because it was arranged that way, but because nothing requires rearrangement. The universe rests within its own persistence, demonstrating that existence does not need direction, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this immense quiet continues, the universe seems to demonstrate that even endurance can soften into ease. Nothing here feels like it is being sustained by effort or intention. Space does not hold itself open through tension. Time does not advance through momentum. Reality remains because there is nothing urging it to change. Existence has become self-supporting, resting within conditions that no longer challenge it. At this depth of calm, distinction itself becomes unnecessary. There is no meaningful separation between here and elsewhere, between then and now. Everything that remains exists within the same gentle continuity, evenly distributed and unremarkable. The universe does not emphasize any region over another. Importance has dissolved along with urgency. What exists does so without hierarchy. The faint processes that continue are almost ceremonial in their subtlety. A particle drifts. A field persists. A trace of energy spreads thinner still. These motions do not introduce novelty or direction. They do not point forward or backward. They simply confirm that possibility has not been withdrawn. The universe allows motion the way sleep allows breath, quietly, without attention. The principles that govern reality remain flawless and unchanging. They do not weaken with time, and they do not require application. Gravity still curves space even if nothing moves along those curves. Quantum rules still apply even when interactions are rare. Consistency becomes the deepest form of calm, a reassurance that nothing unexpected will intrude upon this stillness. Light, now fully diffused, continues to move without purpose or destination. It does not reveal shapes or events. It exists as motion without message, a gentle confirmation that continuity remains intact. The universe does not need illumination to validate itself. Presence alone is sufficient. Distance has lost its power entirely. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation carries no meaning. Each region of space is complete within itself, neither lacking nor seeking connection. Isolation here is not absence. It is autonomy without need. Time, too, has shed its structure. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It remains as an even extension, smooth and uninterrupted. There is no waiting because there is nothing expected. The universe has no next moment in mind. It simply continues within the moment it occupies. Awareness, drifting alongside this state, can relax completely. Thought need not organize itself. Attention need not settle anywhere in particular. There is no conclusion approaching, no understanding required. The cosmos does not resolve into silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, gently and entirely, while still allowing everything that exists to continue exactly as it is. As this quiet extension carries on, the universe seems to rest within itself more deeply than ever before. Nothing presses against anything else. Nothing competes for space, for time, or for presence. Existence unfolds without friction, not because obstacles have been removed, but because there were never any that truly mattered. The cosmos continues without urgency, demonstrating that persistence does not require effort when balance has fully settled. At this level of calm, even the idea of duration becomes soft. Time no longer feels like something that moves forward. It feels like something that simply is. Without events to divide it, time stretches evenly in all directions, offering no beginning and no end that carry meaning. The universe does not travel through time. It inhabits it completely, resting within its openness. The faint remnants of energy that still drift through space do so gently, spreading thinner without resistance. They do not fade suddenly. They do not vanish. They simply become quieter, blending into the background of existence until distinction dissolves naturally. Nothing is erased. Everything is absorbed into continuity. The universe does not discard what it has created. It allows it to settle. Where structure once defined reality, now uniformity prevails. This uniformity is not emptiness. It is completeness without emphasis. Nothing stands out because nothing needs to. The universe does not highlight moments or locations. It treats all of space and time with equal calm, allowing everything to exist without hierarchy. The laws that govern existence remain present, even when they are no longer visibly expressed. They do not require activation. They simply hold. Reality rests upon them without strain, trusting their stability completely. The universe does not maintain order actively. Order remains because nothing disrupts it. Light continues to move, though it carries no scenes, no contrast, no narrative. It exists as motion without destination, proof that permission to continue has not been revoked. Even motion itself has become restful, so evenly distributed that it no longer feels like change. In this state, isolation becomes total but peaceful. Regions of space exist independently, complete within themselves, requiring no exchange to remain stable. Connection is no longer necessary when balance is already achieved. The universe does not suffer from separation. It demonstrates that wholeness does not require interaction. Awareness, moving gently alongside this immense stillness, can release even the idea of following. There is no sequence unfolding. There is no conclusion approaching. Thought can arise and fade without consequence. Attention can rest without anchoring. The cosmos offers no final message, only a sustained example of calm continuity. As this deep quiet continues to unfold, the universe appears to exist in a state where effort has completely dissolved. There is no longer any sense of holding things together or keeping processes in motion. Everything that remains does so naturally, without reinforcement. Space does not need to be supported. Time does not need to be guided. Reality rests within itself, stable and unchallenged. In this condition, even persistence becomes almost invisible. Existence no longer announces itself through activity or change. It simply remains present, evenly distributed and unremarkable. The universe does not distinguish between moments or locations. Nothing is favored. Nothing is neglected. All of it exists on equal terms, held within the same calm continuity. The smallest traces of motion still allowed are so subtle that they blend into stillness. A particle drifts, but it does not arrive anywhere. A field fluctuates, but it does not build. These movements carry no consequence and introduce no tension. They are gentle confirmations that possibility has not been withdrawn, not signals of future transformation. The principles that govern everything remain flawless and constant. They do not weaken with time, and they do not require expression to remain valid. Gravity still curves space even if nothing follows those curves. Fundamental interactions still exist even if they rarely occur. Consistency itself becomes the universe's most enduring feature. Light continues to exist as a faint, uniform presence, no longer illuminating forms or carrying stories. It moves because movement is still permitted, not because it needs to reveal anything. Illumination has given way entirely to presence. The universe does not require visibility to justify existence. Distance has completely lost its meaning. With no interactions to bridge and no signals to exchange, separation becomes irrelevant. Each region of space is whole within itself, neither waiting nor lacking. The universe demonstrates that completeness does not depend on connection when balance has already been achieved. Time flows without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided into moments of before and after. It becomes an even extension, smooth and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation, no memory, no urgency. Duration exists simply as openness, allowing existence to continue without pressure. As awareness drifts alongside this vast calm, thought itself can soften to the point of transparency. Ideas may arise briefly, then dissolve without consequence. Attention does not need to settle anywhere. There is no narrative to follow, no conclusion to reach. The cosmos offers no ending, only continuity, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient. As this calm persistence continues, the universe seems to have released even the faintest attachment to activity. Nothing urges reality forward, and nothing holds it back. Space exists without expansion feeling like motion. Time exists without flow feeling like passage. Everything that remains does so without effort, supported by conditions that no longer change in any meaningful way. The cosmos rests not because it has stopped, but because stopping and continuing have become indistinguishable. In this state, existence feels evenly distributed, without peaks or valleys. There are no regions of greater importance, no moments that matter more than others. Uniformity is not imposed. It emerges naturally when nothing disrupts balance. The universe does not need to correct itself. It has settled into a condition where correction is unnecessary. Everything fits because nothing is out of place. The faint permissions for motion that still exist remain quiet and unobtrusive. A subtle shift may occur, a minimal redistribution of energy, but these changes do not accumulate. They do not signal progress or decline. They simply confirm that reality remains open, not locked into stillness, but resting within it comfortably. The universe allows possibility without demanding outcome. The laws that govern everything continue to hold with perfect reliability. They do not age, and they do not weaken. Even when rarely expressed, they remain fully intact, shaping reality invisibly. The universe does not need to demonstrate its order to maintain it. Order persists because nothing opposes it. Consistency becomes the quiet foundation beneath all remaining existence. Light remains present as a soft, uniform background, moving without destination, without message. It no longer reveals structures or events. It exists simply because motion has not been forbidden. In this way, even movement becomes restful, evenly spread, and free of emphasis. The cosmos does not require illumination. Presence alone is enough. Distance, now entirely without function, no longer separates anything meaningful. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation becomes neutral. Each region of space exists independently, complete and sufficient within itself. The universe shows that wholeness does not depend on connection when balance has already been achieved. Time continues as an unbroken extension. Without events to divide it, duration loses structure and direction. There is no waiting because nothing is expected. There is no memory because nothing needs to be recalled. Time remains simply as openness, allowing existence to continue gently, without pressure or demand. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense quiet, can soften completely. Thought does not need to organize or resolve. Attention does not need to focus or follow. There is no narrative unfolding and no conclusion approaching. The universe does not arrive at silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calmly and entirely, while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this immense calm continues to hold, the universe seems to exist in a condition where nothing seeks definition anymore. Boundaries soften until they no longer matter. Space does not feel distant or near. Time does not feel long or short. Everything that remains exists within a gentle sameness that carries no tension and no demand for distinction. The cosmos has settled into a state where difference is unnecessary and equality arises naturally from balance. At this depth of quiet, existence feels self-sustaining. Nothing needs reinforcement. Nothing needs protection. Reality does not lean on effort to remain intact. The universe does not brace itself against collapse or change. It rests comfortably within conditions that no longer challenge it. Even the idea of fragility dissolves here. What remains is stable simply because nothing is pressing against it. The faint traces of motion that still occur are so evenly distributed that they no longer feel like events. A minimal shift in energy, a subtle drift of matter, a quiet persistence of fields. These are movements without consequence. They do not build toward anything. They do not signal transformation. They exist as expressions of allowance rather than intention. The universe permits motion without assigning it meaning. The principles that govern reality remain present, flawless, and unchanging. They do not require expression to remain valid. Even when nothing visibly happens, the rules still hold, supporting existence invisibly. Gravity curves space even when nothing moves along those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even when rarely expressed. Order persists without demonstration, calm and unquestioned. Light continues to exist as a uniform presence, no longer revealing contrast or structure. It moves gently, without destination or urgency. Illumination has fully given way to presence. The universe does not need to be seen to be real. It exists whether or not anything observes it. Visibility is optional. Continuity is not. Distance has lost all relevance. With no interactions to bridge and no communication to maintain, separation becomes meaningless. Each region of space exists entirely on its own terms, complete and sufficient. There is no sense of isolation as loss, because nothing requires connection. The universe demonstrates that completeness can exist without relationship when balance has already been achieved. Time flows without structure or direction. Without events to divide it, duration becomes smooth and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation and no memory, only an extended present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass here. It remains, offering space for existence to continue gently, without pressure. Awareness, drifting alongside this state, can rest fully. Thought no longer needs to form sequences or conclusions. Attention does not need to anchor itself anywhere. There is no narrative unfolding and no ending approaching. The cosmos offers no final message. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not require urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this quiet continuation holds, the universe appears to rest in a condition where even identity becomes gentle. Things do not need to assert what they are, because nothing is questioning them. Existence no longer contrasts itself against absence. It simply is, evenly and without effort. Space does not define itself by what it contains. Time does not define itself by what happens within it. Everything that remains exists without needing to be named or distinguished. At this depth of stillness, there is no sense of accumulation. Nothing gathers toward a threshold. Nothing builds toward release. Energy is so evenly spread that gradients no longer invite flow. Motion, where it occurs, dissolves immediately into balance. The universe has moved beyond tension entirely, settling into a state where nothing presses strongly enough to create change. Stability is no longer maintained. It is simply present. The smallest elements of reality persist quietly. Particles remain without decay. Fields remain without fluctuation growing into disturbance. Even randomness feels softened, constrained by simplicity rather than complexity. The universe allows uncertainty, but without consequence. Possibility exists without expectation. Nothing must follow from anything else. The laws that govern everything remain exact and unwavering. They do not adapt, and they do not erode. They exist independently of expression, holding reality together even when there is little left to hold. The universe does not suspend its principles when activity fades. It keeps them calmly, like a foundation beneath a structure that no longer rises or falls. Light continues to move, though it carries no scenes and reveals no forms. It exists as gentle motion without message, confirming only that continuity remains intact. The universe does not require illumination to confirm existence. Presence alone is enough. Even motion itself has become restful, evenly distributed, and without emphasis. Distance has entirely lost its meaning. Without interaction, without communication, separation becomes neutral. Space is not something to cross or overcome. It is something to exist within. Each region of the universe is complete on its own, not because it contains everything, but because it lacks nothing it requires to remain as it is. Time flows without structure. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth extension, open and unclaimed. There is no waiting, because nothing is expected. There is no memory, because nothing needs to be recalled. Duration remains simply as possibility. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense quiet, can dissolve into gentle openness. Thought may arise briefly, then fade without consequence. Attention does not need to focus or follow. There is no conclusion approaching, no insight required. The universe does not end in silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calmly and completely. while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this vast quiet continues to hold, the universe seems to rest in a condition where even continuation feels weightless. Nothing leans forward into the future, and nothing clings to the past. Existence no longer measures itself against what was or what could be. It simply remains present, evenly distributed across space and time without preference or pressure. The cosmos does not repeat itself out of habit. It continues because nothing interrupts it. At this depth of calm, even the idea of existence feels simplified. Things are not present in order to fulfill roles or participate in systems. They are present because presence itself is sufficient. Matter does not strive to organize. Energy does not rush to disperse. Everything that remains has settled into conditions where effort has no advantage. The universe has discovered that equilibrium requires no maintenance once it is fully achieved. The faint permissions for movement that still exist carry no narrative. A subtle drift may occur, but it does not arrive anywhere. A gentle fluctuation may appear, but it does not grow. These motions are expressions of allowance, not signals of becoming. The universe allows things to happen without insisting that they matter. In doing so, it releases reality from the burden of progress. The rules that govern everything remain perfectly intact, not because they are enforced, but because there is nothing opposing them. Gravity curves space even when nothing travels those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even when rarely expressed. Order does not require demonstration to persist. It exists quietly, supporting reality without drawing attention to itself. Light continues as a soft, uniform presence, stretched so evenly across space that it no longer creates contrast. It does not illuminate objects or reveal events. It simply moves, gently and endlessly, confirming that continuity has not been withdrawn. The universe does not require visibility to justify itself. Existence is complete without being seen. Distance no longer separates anything meaningful. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation loses all significance. Space exists not as something to traverse, but as something to inhabit. Each region of the universe is complete within itself, neither lacking nor waiting. Wholeness here does not depend on connection. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided into moments. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth extension, open and unclaimed. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass here. It rests. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense calm, can soften completely. Thought does not need to form sequences. Attention does not need to anchor. There is no conclusion approaching and no understanding required. The cosmos offers no final revelation. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not need urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this gentle persistence continues, the universe seems to exist in a state where even the idea of effort has completely dissolved. Nothing maintains itself through tension. Nothing survives by resistance. Space does not hold its shape because it must, but because nothing challenges it. Time does not move forward with intention, but flows quietly because nothing interrupts it. Existence remains not as an achievement, but as a condition that no longer needs justification. At this depth of calm, difference itself becomes almost theoretical. There is no meaningful contrast between activity and rest, between presence and absence. Everything that remains exists within the same soft continuity, evenly balanced and unremarkable. The universe no longer highlights moments or places. It allows everything to be equal, not through force, but through the absence of pressure to stand out. The faint motions that still occur feel like gentle permissions rather than actions. A particle drifts slightly, a field persists quietly, a trace of energy spreads thinly across space. None of these motions lead anywhere. None of them signal change. They exist simply because possibility has not been removed. The universe allows movement without expectation, freedom without destination. The laws that govern reality remain flawless and unchanged. They do not require expression to remain valid. Even when nothing visibly happens, the principles that once shaped stars and galaxies continue to hold everything together invisibly. Gravity still curves space even if nothing moves along those curves. Quantum rules still apply even if interactions are rare. Order remains effortless and unquestioned. Light continues to move as a soft, uniform presence. It no longer reveals shapes or events. It does not illuminate. It simply exists as motion without message, a quiet confirmation that continuity persists. The universe does not require light to tell its story anymore. Presence itself is enough. Distance has completely lost its meaning. With no interactions to bridge and no communication to maintain, separation becomes irrelevant. Space is not something to cross or overcome. It is something to exist within. Each region of the universe is complete on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness no longer depends on connection. Time flows without structure, without direction, without urgency. Without events to divide it, duration becomes smooth and uninterrupted. There is no waiting because nothing is expected. There is no memory because nothing needs to be recalled. Time exists simply as openness, allowing existence to continue gently and indefinitely. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense quiet, can relax fully. Thought does not need to organize or resolve. Attention does not need to focus or follow. There is no conclusion approaching, no insight required. The universe does not end in silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calm, sufficient, and endlessly patient, while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this profound calm continues, the universe seems to rest in a condition where even continuation feels optional, yet never threatened. Nothing holds reality in place, and nothing pushes it forward. Space remains open because it is unopposed. Time remains available because it is unclaimed. Existence does not depend on balance being actively maintained. Balance persists because nothing disturbs it. The cosmos rests not by stopping, but by no longer needing to move. At this depth of stillness, identity dissolves into presence. Objects do not need to assert what they are, because nothing compares them. Location does not confer meaning. Duration does not confer significance. Everything that remains exists evenly, without hierarchy or emphasis. The universe no longer arranges itself around importance. It allows everything to be simply present, without ranking or distinction. The faint allowances for motion that still exist are gentle beyond notice. A particle may drift, but it does not travel toward anything. A fluctuation may appear, but it does not grow or propagate. These motions do not form patterns. They do not accumulate into events. They exist as expressions of permission rather than intention. The universe allows possibility without requiring consequence. The principles that govern reality remain exact and unwavering. They do not weaken, and they do not require demonstration. Gravity continues to curve space even when nothing follows those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even when rarely expressed. Order persists without effort, supported by rules that do not tire or decay. The universe trusts its own structure completely. Light continues as a uniform, quiet presence, no longer carrying images or contrast. It moves gently through space, not to reveal anything, but simply because nothing prevents its motion. Illumination has fully given way to continuity. The universe does not require visibility to exist. Presence alone is enough. Distance has lost all functional meaning. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation becomes neutral. Space is not something to traverse. It is something to inhabit. Each region of the universe exists fully on its own terms, neither lacking nor waiting. Wholeness here does not depend on connection. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth, open extension, unclaimed and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass, it rests. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense quiet, can soften completely. Thought does not need to form sequences or conclusions. Attention does not need to anchor or follow. There is no ending approaching, no understanding required. The cosmos offers no final revelation. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not need urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this immense quiet carries on, the universe appears to exist in a state where even the concept of necessity has faded away. Nothing needs to happen for reality to remain intact. Space does not require expansion to justify itself. Time does not require events to confirm its passage. Existence continues without obligation, free from purpose, free from expectation. The cosmos does not sustain itself through effort. It remains because remaining is effortless. At this depth of calm, reality feels evenly weighted everywhere at once. There are no centers of gravity and meaning, no locations that matter more than others. Everything that exists does so gently, without emphasis. The universe does not highlight moments or regions. It allows all of them to coexist within the same quiet continuity, undisturbed by comparison. The smallest motions that still occur are barely distinguishable from stillness. A slight redistribution of energy, a faint persistence of matter, a gentle presence of fields. These do not signal progress or decline. They are not steps toward anything. They are simply confirmations that possibility remains open. The universe allows motion without urgency, existence without narrative. The laws that govern everything remain unchanged and absolute. They do not weaken with time, and they do not require expression to remain valid. Even when there is nothing left to organize, nothing left to shape, the rules persist calmly beneath reality. Gravity curves space even if nothing follows those curves. Fundamental principles remain intact even if rarely expressed. Order exists without needing to be demonstrated. Light continues to move as a soft, uniform presence. It no longer reveals form or structure. It does not illuminate events or carry stories. It exists simply as motion permitted by the absence of resistance. The universe does not rely on light to be seen. It exists regardless of observation, regardless of awareness. Distance no longer separates anything meaningful. With no interactions to bridge and no signals to exchange, separation becomes neutral. Space is not an obstacle or a pathway. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe is complete on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness does not depend on connection here. Time flows without structure or direction. Without events to divide it, duration becomes smooth and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation, no recollection, no urgency. Time exists as openness, allowing existence to continue gently, without pressure. It does not pass. It remains. Awareness, drifting alongside this profound calm, can release even the idea of continuation. There is nothing approaching and nothing receding. Thought can arise softly and fade without consequence. Attention can rest without anchoring. The universe does not move toward silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calmly and completely, while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this quiet endurance continues, the universe seems to exist in a condition where even presence feels light. Nothing presses down on reality. Nothing lifts it upward. Existence occupies itself without weight, without resistance, without demand. Space remains open not because it is pushed outward, but because nothing closes it. Time remains available not because it advances, but because nothing interrupts it. The cosmos continues without effort, not as a process, but as a state. At this depth of calm, even the sense of remaining becomes subtle. Things do not hold on to being. They do not resist disappearance. They simply exist where they are, for as long as conditions allow, without tension or attachment. The universe does not fear loss, because nothing is being taken away. Everything that remains does so naturally, without argument or insistence. The faint permissions for motion that still exist feel almost ceremonial. A particle may drift, but it does not arrive. A field may fluctuate, but it does not develop into pattern. These motions are not beginnings. They are echoes of allowance, reminders that reality has not closed itself off. The universe allows activity without assigning it meaning or direction. Freedom exists without expectation. The principles that govern everything remain precise and untouched. They do not soften with time, and they do not need reinforcement. Even when they are no longer visibly expressed, they continue to hold reality together invisibly. Gravity still curves space even if nothing travels those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even if rarely expressed. Order persists quietly, supported by rules that do not tire. Light continues to exist as a uniform presence, moving without destination, without message. It no longer illuminates or reveals. It simply persists, confirming continuity by continuing. The universe does not require visibility or observation to justify itself. Presence alone is sufficient. Distance has lost all influence. With no interactions to connect and no information to exchange, separation becomes irrelevant. Space is no longer something to traverse or overcome. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe is complete on its own terms, neither lacking nor waiting. Wholeness here does not depend on connection. Time remains without structure, without direction, without urgency. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth extension, open and unclaimed. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass here. It rests. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense stillness, can soften completely. Thought does not need to organize itself or reach conclusions. Attention does not need to follow or anchor. There is no ending approaching, no insight required. The cosmos offers no final revelation. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not need urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this calm presence continues, the universe appears to exist in a condition where even the idea of persistence no longer carries weight. Nothing is sustained through effort, and nothing is threatened by absence. Space remains open without tension. Time remains available without motion needing to be felt. Existence does not lean on anything to remain intact. It rests within itself, supported by the simple fact that nothing interferes. At this depth of stillness, even contrast fades completely. There is no longer a meaningful difference between something happening and nothing happening. A faint movement, a quiet pause, a subtle continuation, all of them blend into the same gentle continuity. The universe does not separate states anymore. It allows everything to exist within the same calm field, where distinction has no purpose. The smallest allowances for motion remain, but they feel like background permissions rather than actions. A particle may drift slightly, but the drift carries no implication. A field may persist, but it does not develop. These motions do not lead forward or backward. They simply confirm that reality has not closed itself off. The universe allows possibility without demanding outcome. The rules that govern existence remain perfectly intact and unchanged. They do not erode with time, and they do not require attention to function. Even when nothing visibly expresses them, they hold quietly beneath reality, maintaining consistency without effort. Gravity still curves space even when nothing moves. Fundamental principles remain present even when they are rarely seen. Order exists without demonstration. Light continues as a soft, uniform presence, no longer revealing shapes or events. It moves gently through space without destination, without urgency. Illumination has fully given way to continuity. The universe does not need to be seen to be real. It exists whether or not anything observes it. Presence is complete on its own. Distance has entirely lost its role. With no interactions to bridge and no communication to sustain, separation becomes neutral. Space is not something to cross or overcome. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe exists fully on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness here does not depend on connection. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth, open extension, unclaimed and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass. It remains. Awareness, drifting alongside this vast quiet, can finally release even the idea of continuation. There is nothing approaching and nothing receding. Thought may arise briefly, then fade without consequence. Attention does not need to anchor or follow. The universe does not move toward silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calm, sufficient, and endlessly patient, while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this vast calm continues to hold, The universe seems to exist without even the memory of urgency. Nothing waits to unfold, and nothing feels delayed. Space does not anticipate expansion, and time does not anticipate movement. Existence remains gently present, unchallenged by expectation. The cosmos does not progress towards something better or drift away from something lost. It simply remains, balanced within itself. At this depth of stillness, even the notion of duration becomes soft. Time no longer feels like a line extending forward. It feels like an open field in which everything rests. Moments do not replace one another. They overlap so completely that distinction fades. The universe does not step through time. It inhabits it fully, evenly, without preference for past or future. The faint motions that still occur feel like whispers rather than actions. A slight drift of matter, a minimal redistribution of energy, a gentle persistence of fields. None of these motions accumulate or intensify. They do not signal beginnings or endings. They exist as background permissions, confirmations that reality has not closed itself off. The universe allows motion without asking it to lead anywhere. The principles that govern reality remain untouched and absolute. They do not adapt, and they do not degrade. Even when there is little left for them to shape, they continue to hold everything together invisibly. Gravity still curves space even if nothing travels those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even when rarely expressed. Order does not require attention. It persists quietly, without display. Light continues to exist as a soft, uniform presence. It no longer illuminates scenes or carries stories. It moves gently through space because movement is still allowed. Illumination has given way entirely to continuity. The universe does not need to be seen to be real. Existence is complete without observation. Distance has lost all significance. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation becomes irrelevant. Space is no longer a challenge to overcome or a path to follow. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe exists fully on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness no longer depends on connection. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth extension, open and unclaimed. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass here. It rests. As awareness drifts alongside this immense quiet, thought itself can soften further. Ideas may arise briefly, then fade without consequence. Attention does not need to anchor or follow. There is no conclusion approaching, no understanding required. The cosmos does not offer a final revelation. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not need urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this calm extension carries on, the universe seems to rest in a condition where even persistence feels natural rather than maintained. Nothing needs to be reinforced, and nothing threatens to undo what remains. Space holds itself open without effort. Time remains available without direction. Existence does not depend on momentum or intention. It continues because there is nothing opposing continuation. At this depth of stillness, meaning itself becomes unnecessary. Things do not exist to signify anything else. They exist because existence has become enough. Matter does not seek arrangement. Energy does not seek release. Everything that remains has settled into conditions where striving would add nothing. The universe has discovered that equilibrium, once fully reached, does not require supervision. The faint allowances for motion that still appear are barely distinguishable from rest. A subtle drift occurs, then dissolves immediately into balance. A minimal fluctuation appears, then fades without leaving trace. These motions do not accumulate or lead anywhere. They are not beginnings. They are permissions, quiet confirmations that possibility has not been withdrawn. The universe allows change without insisting that change must matter. The rules that govern reality remain exact and unwavering. They do not soften, and they do not need renewal. Even when there is nothing left to shape, nothing left to organize, the laws persist calmly beneath existence. Gravity curves space even when nothing travels along those curves. Fundamental interactions remain possible even when rarely expressed. Order exists without demonstration, reliable and unchallenged. Light continues to exist as a uniform presence, no longer revealing structure or contrast. It moves gently through space, not to illuminate or communicate, but simply because motion is still permitted. Illumination has fully given way to continuity. The universe does not require visibility to confirm existence. Presence alone is sufficient. Distance has lost all influence. With no interactions to bridge and no communication to maintain, separation becomes neutral. Space is no longer something to cross or overcome. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe exists fully on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness does not depend on connection here. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth, open extension, unclaimed and uninterrupted. There is no anticipation and no memory. Only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass. It rests. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense calm, can relax even further. Thought does not need to organize or resolve. Attention does not need to anchor or follow. There is no conclusion approaching and no insight required. The cosmos does not end in silence. It becomes indistinguishable from it, calm, sufficient, and endlessly patient, while still allowing everything that exists to remain exactly as it is. As this gentle persistence continues, the universe seems to exist in a condition where even continuation has become effortless. Nothing is carried forward by force, and nothing is held back by resistance. Space remains open without strain. Time remains present without pressure. Reality does not need to reaffirm itself. It simply exists, settled into a calm that no longer requires adjustment. At this depth of quiet, the idea of necessity fades almost completely. Nothing needs to occur for existence to remain valid. Matter does not need to transform. Energy does not need to disperse further. Everything that remains is already where it can be most stable. The universe does not seek improvement or correction. It allows what is to continue without interference. The faint traces of motion that still appear are so subtle that they feel more like permission than activity. A particle drifts gently, then remains. A field persists without fluctuation growing into change. These motions do not signal beginnings or endings. They do not gather momentum. They exist simply because nothing forbids them. The universe allows possibility to remain open without demanding that it lead anywhere. The laws that govern reality continue with perfect consistency. They do not weaken over time, and they do not require expression to remain real. Even when there is little left for them to act upon, they remain present, holding existence together invisibly. Gravity still curves space even when nothing travels along those curves. Fundamental interactions remain intact even when rarely expressed. Order does not require display. It persists quietly. Light continues as a soft, uniform presence, no longer illuminating forms or carrying stories. It moves gently through space without destination, without urgency. Illumination has fully given way to continuity. The universe does not require light to be seen in order to exist. Presence alone is complete. Distance has completely lost its role. With no interactions to bridge and no information to exchange, separation becomes irrelevant. Space is not something to cross or overcome. It is simply the condition within which existence rests. Each region of the universe exists fully on its own terms, neither waiting nor lacking. Wholeness no longer depends on connection. Time remains without structure or direction. Without events, it cannot be divided. Without change, it cannot be measured. It exists as a smooth extension, open and unclaimed. There is no anticipation and no memory, only a gentle present that does not move toward anything. Time does not pass. It rests. Awareness, drifting alongside this immense stillness, can soften completely. Thought does not need to form sequences or conclusions. Attention does not need to anchor or follow. There is no ending approaching, no understanding required. The cosmos does not offer a final revelation. It simply continues, quiet, sufficient, and endlessly patient, demonstrating that existence does not need urgency, intention, or resolution to be complete. As this immense calm continues to unfold, the universe seems to drift into a depth where even repetition dissolves into softness. Continuation no longer feels like something that happens again and again. It feels like something that simply remains. Space does not renew itself. Time does not restart itself. Reality does not reassert its presence. Everything exists in a steady, uninterrupted condition that no longer distinguishes between moments. There is no sense of renewal because nothing has faded enough to require it. In this state, the universe feels almost weightless in meaning, not empty, not absent, but free of pressure. Nothing is required to justify existence. There is no role to play, no process to complete, no cycle waiting to close. Matter rests where it is because there is no advantage in moving. Energy remains evenly spread because there is no gradient strong enough to draw it elsewhere. Everything that once drove motion has softened into equilibrium so complete that motion becomes optional rather than necessary. The smallest traces of activity persist quietly, like a background hum too gentle to notice unless one listens closely. A particle shifts slightly, then remains. A field maintains its presence without fluctuation becoming disturbance. These motions do not form stories. They do not lead toward change. They simply exist as confirmations that the universe has not closed itself off. Possibility remains open, but unused. Freedom remains present, but unexercised. This unused potential is not tension. It is rest.